Welcome back to Kempf Fitness Professional. This is another 20-minute movement hygiene. We have 5 minutes of deep belly breathing followed by 15 minutes of body weight mobility. We're going to start off in any position that feels comfortable. You can lie down on your back, you can find a seated position, you can assume a child's pose or whatever feels comfortable for you that allows you to elongate and align the spine, relax completely, and take deep breaths into the soft belly. We're trying to take diaphragmatic breaths here, and I like to prescribe a tempo or a breath count to help you find a nice rhythm that helps to optimize the engagement of the parasympathetic nervous system. So you can find something like a 4-second inhale with a 2-second hold at the top of the inhale, a 4-second exhale, and a 2-second hold at the bottom of the exhale. This is what I call the 4-part breath. We're just emphasizing all 4 phases of the breath: the inhale, the hold, the exhale, and the hold. A 2-to-1 ratio works well for most people, but you can also try a 1-to-1 ratio if you have better practice with this deep belly breathing. So something like a 4-second inhale, a 4-second hold, a 4-second exhale, and a 4-second hold. This is sometimes also referred to as box breathing. You can visualize in your mind drawing a vertical line upwards like the left side of a square for the 4-second inhale, and then drawing a line to the right for 4 seconds, drawing a line down for 4 seconds, and drawing a line to the left for 4 seconds, making a square in your mind and just connecting those 4 lines together. It's just a nice little visualization that can go along with this rhythmic breath to help you stay focused on the task at hand, which is to just breathe nice and relaxed, deep belly breathing with an even rhythm, a nice steady tempo for 5 minutes. We're just trying to get completely relaxed, tuned in, turn off the monkey mind, and come into that state of presence and awareness. Once we have that established rhythm in the body, we can start to bring the attention inward. Doing a little body scan, we can just start at the top of the head and just thinking about relaxing the muscles in the face, putting your attention on the muscles of your forehead, and just imagining a softening, a smoothing out of the wrinkles of the forehead, letting the eyebrows relax, the eyes and the cheeks relax, the muscles around the face, the lips, and the jaw, letting the jaw become heavy and sink into the neck, feeling the collarbones start to soften and sink down to the sides, slightly lengthening from the left to the right, opening up the chest, keeping the rib cage nice and relaxed and still here, focusing all of our attention now on the belly, just allowing that breath to be pulled in from the diaphragm as the soft belly lifts up, and then the exhale just happens naturally with gravity, allowing that nice relaxing exhale to soften you a little bit more, relax you a little bit more. Then just continuing to bring your attention down the rest of the body, letting the shoulders open and relax, feeling the warmth roll down the arms, down the hands, down into the fingertips, down into the floor, feeling the hips open, feeling the legs soften, feeling that warmth trickle down the thighs, down the calves, down to the feet, and let any kind of stress or tension just drip off of your body and melt into the floor as you give every last bit of your attention to your breath. Stay here for another 30 seconds. Just breathe. Stay with that tempo. Stay relaxed. begin to wiggle the fingers and the toes. We're going to move into our first movement, which will be to mobilize the spine. We're going to assume a tall kneeling position, just starting on both knees with a long spine, vertical spine. And we're going to wrap our arms around our chest, reaching for the opposite shoulders here. We're going to be performing tall, kneeling, thoracic spine circles or spinal circles. This is known in the functional range conditioning realm as controlled articular rotations, which really just translates to slow and focused joint circles. We're trying to create some movement here through the mid-upper back, and we're trying to squeeze the arms together to try to minimize the amount of movement or compensation happening in the shoulder joints and in the arms. Just by squeezing our arms together, we can really help to facilitate more stability and isolation there. We can also grab a pillow or some object. A medicine ball works really well to add a little bit more progressive load to this movement, but we're looking for something like 6 to 10 circles each way here. We want to go nice and slow, and we want to avoid moving anything other than our thoracic spine. If you get a little bit of deviation here in the neck, that's okay. I think that actually feels nice when you're lifting the chin up as you're extending the spine, opening the chest and leaning back slightly. But you'll notice that I'm trying to minimize any kind of movement in my lumbar spine, my low back, or my hips. I don't want to have too much excessive movement there. I want to really isolate and focus on that upper back and that thoracic spine. In the next movement, we're going to go to quadruped, which is all fours, and we're going to perform another variation of these spinal circles from our cat-cow position. So we'll be going through flexion and extension of the spine, but we'll add this same kind of spiraling circle motion here. So we're just finishing up, going the other direction here with our tall kneeling thoracic spine circles. We want to get nice, good rotation left to right, turning the shoulders, twisting in that thoracic spine, making sure the core stays engaged. Once we finish our 6 to 10, now we assume that vertical thigh bone, vertical arm bone position on all fours. And you'll notice here that I changed the position of my spine and my body throughout this movement. It doesn't have to be perfect green check mark form or a red X. You're not doing it right. There's a large window of variability here for you to play around. So you can emphasize a little bit more of the upper back, the neck, and the shoulders by getting the arms more involved and emphasizing the rotation from the upper spine, or you can get more of the low spine and the hips involved by really using your deep abdominal muscles to contract and relax and sway your hip bones side to side. So here I'm doing 10 reps each way. This one feels really good. So feel free to play around here. You don't have to do it the same every time. Even depending on the day, you may change a little bit of how you do it. You can go wider with your knees, narrower with your knees. You can bend the elbows. You can keep the elbows straight. You can get the head and neck a little more involved if you'd like. But just play around here, big open circles, trying to imagine that your spine is like a big stirring stick and you're stirring a pot in a big circle. Once we get about 10 each way there, we're going to go into some rollover V sits. We're going to roll over with our feet above our head. They don't have to touch the ground. The legs don't have to be straight. But that's what we're working towards one day when we have the capacity and adequate range of motion to be able to bring our legs up overhead. If you're feeling really tight in the calves, the hamstrings, or you don't have the ability to control that load on the spine, then just be mindful here and just go halfway back and keep your knees tucked into your chest. If it feels good, Go all the way back, toes over the head until they touch the ground. Once we get about 6 to 10 rollover V sits reaching straight forward, then we'll go side to side. So the motion, as you can see, is the legs up over the head. As we come up to that seated position rolling forward, we spread the legs as far as we can into that V position and we reach. That's going to get you a really good stretch on the adductors, the groin muscles, and the inner hamstring. You'll get a little low back stretch here as well, but be mindful again, if this is a new movement or you have a limited range of motion, then be careful when reaching forward. Try to keep the chest postured up, lifted high, and the belly button pulled in to ensure that you're not excessively rounding and stressing anything in the low back. After about 6 to 10 of these each way, then we'll move on, but just make sure that you're being mindful here, going side to side. But if it feels good, give yourself that little extra room to play in these movements. Now that we've mobilized the hips, the hamstrings, and the spine a little bit, we're going to start to activate the muscles of the trunk and the core. This is a single arm rotating low plank. So we're going to be on one arm and down on our forearm here, low plank position. We're starting in our front plank, reaching the other arm underneath us as far as we can without touching the ground. And then we're rotating all the way into a side plank. So the feet are going to rotate all the way to the floor in that side plank position. Glutes are engaged, hips are fully extended, long straight line from the head through the shoulders, the hips, the knees, and the ankles. And then we reach and open that thoracic spine, get a nice little chest stretch there by really reaching that top arm behind us. We're going again 6 to 10 each side here. I'm doing 6. Notice the position of my forearm. So instead of my arm being front to back with my fist or fingers pointed forward in front of my body, my arms are left to right, and this will allow you to rotate into that side plank efficiently and be nice and stacked in that position. So we're opening, reaching, twisting in the side plank, and then we come back to our front plank and reach underneath the body. Keeping the hips low, glutes engaged here, and I'm trying to push my rib cage, push my armpit up off the floor on that working arm, so that way I've got a lot of good shoulder stability, a lot of activation happening there in the upper trunk. Then after those, we have a single leg down dog with a kick out. This is going to be a lot of hamstring stretching here, and we'll get a little bit of core and shoulder stability when we're coming through from the downward dog position to the plank position. So we come back to a down dog, hips are high, we push the armpits back to the toes, and trying to keep a nice straight aligned spine there. If we can, get a nice little bit of extension in the low spine at the top of that down dog. Then we kick one leg straight up in the air. That's our single leg down dog. So the standing leg is going to be the one getting the stretch on the hamstring. From there, then we hinge forward so our shoulders are over our wrists, and we assume that kind of high plank position. At the same time, we're kicking our top leg, the one in the air, all the way underneath us at a 90-degree angle out to the side. This is going to give you quite a stretch on the lateral hamstring and the IT band, so be very mindful here of how much tension you're putting on the back of that thigh. You don't want to put too much tension here. If you have tight hamstrings, make sure that you're getting used to the movement at first by going slow and bending the knee slightly if you need to. The pigeon pose, if you're familiar, is a little bit less tension on that hamstring. So if you need to regress or modify, bend that bottom knee as it kicks out to the side to allow for a little less tension on that lateral hamstring and IT band, then you can do that as well. Again, about 6 reps each side. Once we finish that, we're going to go into a glute bridge march. This is going to be our standard glute bridge position for start, and we're going to walk ourselves into a back plank. So we start with the feet underneath the knees, our glutes tucked up, our abs engaged so our ribs are cinched down. We've got a nice straight line from the shoulders through the hips up to the knees. And then from that position, we're going to walk our feet out about 3 to 5 steps each foot until we get a long leg position, a long lever from the back. But the glutes never touch the ground here. So this is going to really light up the hamstrings, the glutes, and a little bit in the low back and core as well. And this is activating the hamstring in a long position, which is somewhat rare for a lot of movements that you'll see for the posterior chain, unless you're talking about a straight-legged deadlift or a single-leg deadlift. So this is a nice variation that I like to throw in to teach people how to eccentrically load and lengthen that hamstring in a safe manner. To regress this movement, if you can't go all the way to a straight leg into your full back plank, then you just stop as that knee starts to straighten. So you would go, say, halfway or 3/4 of the way walked out into your back plank, so the knees aren't fully straight, there's a little bit of a bend. The longer the leg, the harder it is. So only walk out as far as you can with control, and make sure that you don't lose that pelvic tilt, so that way the low back doesn't take the force. Once we finish those, we're going to go right into our jumping strider. The strider is a wonderful movement where we get to open up the groin and the hip flexors. This is a little bit more progressed. If you've seen some other of my movement hygienes, then you're familiar with this movement. We're going to load the shoulders and the core as we pop the hips up in the air, and then we land in that strider position. We're going 6 to 10 again each side on that one, and that will help to eccentrically load those hamstrings and groin as you decelerate from that jump to the strider. After that, one of my favorites, going into a multi-movement here. We're going into a push-up, walking back into a bottom squat, and then hips come high, and we walk back out to the push-up. So this is a walkout with a push-up with a bottom squat. So we start here in the forward fold position. As you'll see, we walk our hands out 3 to 5 steps each hand until we get the shoulders over the wrists, hips and shoulders level, nice high plank position. We perform the push-up, and then on the way back, we keep the hips low. We bend the knees and walk ourselves back to that bottom squat position. We kind of pass through the bear crawl into our bottom squat. Usually I'll refer to this as like a bottom squat to a bear hold position as a regression. So if the push-up is too much, just walk out and hold a bear position or a high plank as opposed to performing the push-up. When you walk back to the bottom squat, when you lift the hips up, before you go all the way into the forward fold, pause in that bottom squat with the core engaged and the legs fully engaged. You'll see here, I lift up 3-4 inches and I hold for that 1 second pause in the bottom squat. I'm just working on not only creating better range in my bottom squat position, but teaching my body and my brain how to stabilize that load, control that load in that lengthened bottom position of the bottom squat. So spending time in that bottom squat position, just a few inches above parallel, is a great way to load those tissues, get a little extra work, and teach the body how to improve your range of motion and control in that bottom squat. And then last but not least, we've got the Cossack Squat. This is also known as a transverse lunge, Cossack lunge, or a transverse lunge. We're starting in a standing position. We step backwards and rotate the trunk, the pelvis, and the shoulders at 90 degrees. So we end up in a lateral lunge position, but you'll see my front foot still stays pointed forward the direction I started in. I lift the toes on the front foot to help increase the stretch through the hamstring, specifically the inner hamstring and the adductors here on the front leg. So we have more of a core challenge because we're changing planes, we're rotating 90 degrees, and we're also creating more of a demand for range of motion on that hamstring and groin of the front leg. Leave any questions in the comments, share this with a friend, and subscribe for more.